Hey guys, my name is JC and today we're playing Derevi Imperial Tactician. There are a lot of powerful permanents in Magic that activate for powerful abilities, so we're going to see just how much we can abuse them thanks to Derevi's abilities. If you like the way the deck was built, then make sure to stop by the channel where we have a deck tech as well as other gameplay videos showing how the deck was built as well as how it plays out. In addition, if you'd like to keep up to date with all of the changes that happen to the deck, then make sure to stop by our Discord where we have a channel dedicated specifically to Derevi. There'll be a link in the description below. Let's see just what happens when we tap and untap our permanents again and again. Alright guys, let's see what our opponents are playing today. First up is Slimefoot the Stowaway. Next up is Djeru with Eyes Open. And finally we have Chatterfang Squirrel General. Alright, let's take a look at our opening hand. I think we can definitely keep this. We have a turn 1 mana dork into a turn 3 very powerful mana dork, which with Derevi out is going to produce us a good amount of mana. We also have interaction in the form of Galecaster Colossus, which while it is 7 mana, we're going to be able to get to pretty quickly thanks to Feybarrow Elder. I'd like to have some card draw in our hand, but I think we can keep this and hopefully we'll draw into it. Djeru starts us off by playing a land, and then they pass the turn. Chatterfang plays a shock land, but they have it come into play tapped, and that's going to be it for them. And we draw a Serra Ascendant for turn. Well, my original plan was to play the Birds of Paradise into the Feybarrow Elder, but it's very hard to resist a turn 1 Serra Ascendant, so I think that might be the better play. We can get ahead very early on life and hopefully start to reduce some of our opponent's life totals as quickly as we can. We'll also use it as a way to threat assess our opponents. If anyone gets off to too quick a start, well, that's where the Serra Ascendant's going to go towards. So let's do that. So we'll play our Savannah for turn. And let's get Serra Ascendant on the battlefield. This might ring alarm bells for some of our opponents, but at the very least we'll get some of the removal out of their hand that could potentially go onto our Feybarrow Elder and then eventually our Galecaster Colossus, which are both creatures we'd definitely rather keep around over the Serra Ascendant. Now Slimefoot plays their land for turn, but then they pass the turn. Djeru plays a land, and then they cast an Endless Atlas. Pay 2, tap, draw a card, activate only if you control 3 or more lands with the same name. And that's going to be it for them. Chatterfang plays a land. Next they cast a Skull Clamp. Equipped creature gets +1/-1, and whenever a equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards. Well, that's going to be a very strong card draw engine on Chatterfang. So I think we found our first target with the Serra Ascendant. But they're going to pass the turn there. And we draw a Reese the Redeemed. Alright, well let's start by playing our Tropical Island. Now we're going to move to combat. Let's send the Serra Ascendant towards Chatterfang. The damage goes through. Next we'll cast our Birds of Paradise. And then we're going to follow that up with our Reese the Redeemed. Slimefoot plays a land. And now they cast a Cryptolith Riot. Creatures you control have tap, add 1 mana of any colour. Always a strong card to see in a token deck, and no doubt Slimefoot plans on putting a lot of tokens out pretty quickly. But that's going to be it for their turn. Djeru plays a land. And then they cast a Gatewatch Beacon. It ETBs with 3 loyalty counters on it, it taps for white. Whenever a Planeswalker ETBs under your control, if Gatewatch Beacon has loyalty counters on it, you may move a loyalty counter from Gatewatch Beacon onto a Planeswalker. But that's going to be it for them. Chatterfang plays a land. Now they cast a Cultivate. Search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards, put 1 onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle. But then they pass the turn to us and we draw a Shorikai Genesis Engine. Okay, well there is our card draw engine. So let's play our fetch land for turn. We'll crack it right away. We'll put into play our tap land because I don't plan on getting Shorikai down this turn. And now we'll cast our Feybarrow Elder. Now let's move to combat. This time we're going to send our Serra Ascendant towards the Djeru player. Show our opponents that we're actually spreading the love. That might help to keep that creature around just a little longer, as opposed to targeting just one player. That damage goes through, and then we're going to pass the turn. Slimefoot plays a land. And now they cast their commander. Whenever a Saproling you control dies, Slimefoot the Stowaway deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain a life, and for 4 mana you can create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token. But that's going to be it for them. Djeru starts their turn by activating their Endless Atlas to draw a card. Next they play a land for turn. But it looks like they're just passing the turn from there. Chatterfang plays a land, an Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. So each land now is a swamp in addition to its other types. And then they cast an Araster of the Endless Web. Reach, whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/2 green spider creature token with Reach. Not something we have to worry about too much because we don't run a lot of instants and sorceries in this deck. Let's just hope that our opponents don't feed it too much. But that's going to be it for them. We draw a Verity Circle, another piece of card advantage. So let's start by playing our land for turn. We'll play the flip side. Next, we'll cast our Shurikai, because that's going to turn on our Feybarrow Elder to be able to produce blue mana. So now that gives us enough mana with our Feybarrow Elder to cast our commander, so let's do that. When Derevi ETBs, we're going to use her trigger to untap the Feybarrow Elder. So we essentially cast our commander for free there. And now let's activate our Shurikai Genesis engine. It's going to draw us 2 cards here. A Lightning Greaves and a Growing Rites of Itlamok. Okay, well this is actually a pretty tough choice here. I think we might be able to get rid of the Verity Circle, seeing as we already have card advantage online. Because Lightning Greaves is going to be good protection, and Growing Rites of Itlamok is going to produce us a lot of mana, especially with all the bodies we have on board at the moment. So now let's tap our Feybarrow Elder, we'll cast that Growing Rites of Itlamok. When it ETBs, hopefully we can get another creature out of it. But unfortunately we don't. Now let's move to combat. We'll send a Serra Ascendant towards Slimefoot, and our Reese towards Djeru. Decks like ours really prey upon other decks that don't get out creatures early, because even creatures like Reese the Redeemed are going to be able to get us a very powerful trigger here thanks to Derevi. Damage goes through, that puts 2 Derevi triggers on the stack. We'll use one to untap Shurikai, and we'll use the other to untap our Feybarrow Elder. But in response, it looks like Djeru casts Swords to Plowshares, and they're targeting our commander here. That also triggers Erastus, so they make a Spider token. Exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to its power. Well, we'll let that through. We'll put our commander back into the command zone. Now our Derevi trigger can resolve. So we'll untap Shurikai. Now on our end step, Growing Rites of Itlamok triggers. So we'll be able to flip it over. And now it becomes a land that's going to currently tap for 5 green mana. Which is going to be really useful for us because now we're going to be able to recast our commander, untap Feybarrow Elder, and then get another trigger out of Shurikai. So our engines are really online at the moment. Let's just hope that we can keep them around. Slimefoot plays a land. And now they cast a Tendershoot Dryad. Ascend, at the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token, and Saprolings you control get +2/+2 as long as you have the city's blessing. Well, that's going to go very well with their Cryptolith Rite. It's essentially going to be producing them a mana dork on every player's turn, which with 4 cards in hand could get them into something pretty powerful. Now we move to the Djeru player's turn, and on their upkeep, the Tendershoot Dryad triggers, making a Saproling token. Next, Djeru activates their Endless Atlas to draw a card. They play a land for turn. And now they cast a Stroke of Midnight, and that does trigger a Raster of the Endless Web, and it's targeting our Shurikai. So unfortunately, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to keep our Shurikai around for too long. Destroy target non-land permanent, its controller creates a 1/1 white human creature token. Luckily, we do have responses here, so we're going to tap down our Feybarrow Elder. We'll also tap our Itlamok. Now we'll activate Derevi's ability from the command zone to put it straight onto the battlefield. When Derevi enters, we're going to use her trigger, and we're actually going to target Shurikai here. Now we're going to use some of our floating mana to activate Shurikai. So we'll draw 2 cards. Okay, a Djinn of Infinite Deceits and a land. I'm actually going to get rid of the Djinn here. We'll also make a 1/1 token. And now we're going to untap Shurikai. And we're going to do the same thing again before it goes away. Because the tokens it's going to make is going to get us more Derevi triggers. Now we get a Grand Crescendo and a Dowsing Dagger. Well, I'm going to get rid of this Brushland because those are 2 very powerful cards. Dowsing Dagger is going to be another land that produces a lot of mana, and Grand Crescendo is going to be a defensive weapon as well as an offensive weapon, depending on what happens in the game. Now Shurikai is gone, unfortunately, but at least we did get some good value out of it. And that's going to be it for the Djeru player. And they've certainly had their eyes on us, definitely throwing a lot of their removal towards us, which it is justified. Now on Chatterfang's upkeep, the Tendershoot Dryad does trigger, so they make the 1/1 Saproling. Next, Chatterfang plays a land. And now they cast their commander. It has Forest Walk. If 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus that many 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens are created instead. And for a black sack X squirrels, target creature gets +X -X until end of turn. Really great removal in the command zone, and a very strong token generator as well. Now they cast a Nissa Voice of Zendikar, which they're no doubt going to be using with that +1 to put a 0/1 green plant creature token onto the battlefield. Now they do uptick Nissa, making the plant token, which is also going to make them a squirrel token as well. Now they move to combat, but they decide not to attack, and that is going to be it for their turn. Alright, well we've kept our board state, which is pretty good news. At least most of our board state. Now on our upkeep, Tendershoot Dryad does trigger. So Slimefoot makes another token. And we also draw a land for turn. Alright, well let's start by playing that land. Alright, so before we go to combat, we really want to make use of our big mana producing permanents. Certainly our Fae Burrow and our Itlimoc Cradle of the Sun, so that when we untap them we can get maximum value. So we'll tap down our Fae Burrow. We'll use that mana to cast our Dowsing Dagger. When that ETBs, we have to give an opponent 2 plant tokens. And I think I'm actually going to give it to the Chatterfang player here, because I don't want the Djeru player to be able to have blockers, and I certainly don't want the Slimefoot player to have more mana dorks. Alright, now we'll use this mana to actually equip our Dowsing Dagger to our Serra Ascendant. Just get a little bit more out of that lifelink. And now I think we'll use our Itlimoc to get down our Lightning Greaves and our Galecaster Colossus. So let's tap that down, that gives us 9 green mana. We'll get our Lightning Greaves down first. We'll immediately equip that to our commander. And now we use the rest of our mana to cast our Galecaster Colossus. Alright, so now we have some really great removal down on board. Let's tap our Birds of Paradise. We'll start to use our Reese the Redeemed here to put a few more bodies out on board. So when we get to that 6 mana ability, it can start making us a very big army. Now let's move to combat. We'll send our Serra Ascendant towards the Slimefoot player. We'll send all of our tokens towards Djeru. And we'll also have to send Derevi towards Djeru as well. Just because the Chatterfang player does have reach blockers, and they can potentially kill our commander here. So now all this damage should get through. But before it does, we're going to activate our Galecaster Colossus. And we're going to bounce the Tendershoot Dryad. I think it's had long enough on the board. Now we'll let the damage resolve. That puts 6 Derevi triggers on the stack as well as our Dowsing Dagger. So we'll use our first Derevi trigger on our Itlimoc. Our second one can go on our Galecaster Colossus. And I think we're going to throw the rest of them there as well. Let's start cleaning this board up a little bit so it doesn't become too threatening for us, because it certainly is starting to. And we'll also get a real chance to see the power of Galecaster Colossus, because for 7 mana you want your cards to pull weight, and hopefully we're going to be able to see here that it is. So now we'll untap it. We'll bounce the Arasta. Next we're going to bounce Chatterfang. Then we're going to bounce Slimefoot. Then we'll get the mono white player's Mana Rock. Next I think we'll hit Nissa. And finally we're going to untap our Itlimoc. We'll flip over our Dowsing Dagger. So now we have a land that produces 3 color of any mana. Really great with our untap effects. And from here I think we're just going to pass the turn holding up our Grand Crescendo. That's going to give us a little bit of protection, and if we get the chance, we can hopefully flood the board with a lot more tokens, which Reese the Redeemed's going to be really happy to see. Slimefoot starts by playing a tap land for turn, which does allow them to scry 1. Next they cast a Cankerbloom. Pay 1, sack it, choose 1, destroy target artifact, destroy target enchantment, or proliferate. After that they sacrifice their Cankerbloom, targeting our Lightning Greaves. And then they follow that up by recasting their commander. Now they also cast a Keen Sense, actually targeting their commander. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. And that's going to be it for them. Djeru starts their turn by activating their Endless Atlas. Looks like they've certainly been hunting for answers, or at least better cards. They also play a land for turn. Next they recast their Gatewatch Beacon. But that is going to be it for them. Chatterfang plays a land. When it ETBs it will sacrifice itself. They'll go search their library for a land to put into play tapped. Then they recast their commander. And then they cast a Verdant Command. Choose 2, target player creates 2 tapped 1/1 green squirrel creature tokens, and target player gains 3 life. So they'll actually make 4 squirrels in total here. Now Chatterfang does have 1 black mana open, so they might decide to use some removal here. Well, they are tapping down for something. And unfortunately they are actually activating their commander, targeting our Galecaster Colossus. There's nothing we can do about it. Unfortunately, Grand Crescendo won't actually protect it here. So that will be going down. Now they move to combat. They send 1 squirrel towards us. We're actually going to block with our Elf Warrior here, because I want to take Chatterfang off as many squirrels as I possibly can. Both the tokens go down. Now they move to their end step. We're going to activate our Itlimoc, as well as tap in all of our other lands, making sure we at least have access to some white mana. We'll use some of that mana to start off with to sacrifice our Horizon Canopy. Draw ourselves a card. But we just get ourselves a land there. And let's use the rest of our mana to dump into our Grand Crescendo. So X will currently be 10. So we're going to make 10 citizen tokens here. And now we'll move to our turn. And we draw ourselves a Fairy Mastermind. So we'll start by playing our land for turn. We'll play the back half. So we want to have access to a little bit more blue mana. So now Fairy Mastermind is going to give us access to card draw. It is going to feed our opponents as well, but at this point in time, I think we have enough resources to be able to actually get ahead of them here. So let's tap our land for 3 blue mana. We'll cast our Fairy Mastermind. Now we're going to tap our Itlimoc. That'll give us access to 20 green mana. And now we're going to activate our Fairy Mastermind. That'll draw each player a card. We just get a Noble Hierarch there. So let's do that again. And this time when we activate it, because it's going to be the second card that each of our opponents have drawn for turn, we're going to draw 3 additional cards. And there we draw an Anduril Flame of the West. That's actually really good. Then we get a Breeding Pool, just another land, and finally another land. Okay, well let's cast our Anduril now. And that actually causes one of our opponents to scoop it up. I think they've seen just a little bit too much value from us here. But at least that's one less opponent we have to worry about with our token army. Now let's equip the Anduril to our commander. And that's going to make us 2 additional bodies with flying. That's going to get 2 additional Derevi triggers. Let's activate our Mastermind once again. Make sure we're getting a lot out of this mana. Just another land. Okay, and now we'll use the last 6 of our mana to activate our Reese. So we're going to double the amount of creature tokens we currently have. And that actually causes one of our other opponents to scoop it up. So now we only have 1 opponent left, which makes our job a lot easier. So now let's move to combat. Send our Serra Ascendant, a Faber Older. In fact, we'll pretty much send everything we can at this point. When we attack, that triggers Anduril. So we'll make 2 tapped flying tokens attacking. Looks like our opponent's blocking our 2 flyers. And then the rest just block citizen tokens. Damage goes through, that knocks them down to 25, and we put a lot of Derevi triggers on the stack. Let's use the first one for our Itlamok. Next we'll target our other land. Then we'll untap Derevi. We'll untap our Serra Ascendant. And then I think we're actually going to target our 2 big mana producing lands here. Give us access to a lot of mana, and we can hopefully use our Fairy Mastermind to draw into some answers. I think what I'll be really hunting for here is Memnarch. Because at this point, if we draw our opponent a lot of cards, the only way we can make sure that they can't use those cards is if we take all their resources. So we'll just make sure that we can untap Itlamok a couple of times. And then for the last few triggers, we'll actually put all on our land that produces blue mana. Because that's going to be the bottleneck for what Memnarch needs to be able to steal our opponent's permanents. Alright, so as we come to the last trigger for our Itlamok, we're currently floating 140 green mana and 18 blue mana. So now let's start activating our Fairy Mastermind. And we're going to keep drawing until we hopefully find something relevant. Alright, so we've drawn about 8 cards in, and we've actually gotten to the 1 ring, which I actually really like to see. That's going to give us a little bit of protection, so we'll let all that mana float away. Now in our second main phase, we're going to activate our Itlamok. We'll float 35 mana. We're going to cast the 1 ring. When it ETBs, that's going to give us protection until our next turn. Now we'll activate the 1 ring. And there we go. There's our Memnarch. Alright, that's exactly what we want to see. So now we're going to cast Lauren. We'll take them off their Skull Clamp. Then we're going to cast our Memnarch. Because even if the Chatterfang player can actually remove our board, at least with a board wipe, we do have Banishing Knack to protect it. So now we're going to activate Memnarch. We're going to turn Chatterfang into an artifact. And now we're going to gain control of Chatterfang. Well, that's pretty much all of our blue mana right there. So we'll just cast what we can with our leftover mana. We'll get down our Luminarch Ascension. And I think we're actually going to leave it there. So we will have to go to discard. We'll just get rid of a couple of lands here. Mana is no problem for us anymore. Let's see what the Chatterfang player has for us. They start by playing a land. Next they cast a Fade from History. Each player who controls an artifact or enchantment creates a 2/2 green bear creature token, then destroy all artifacts and enchantments. Alright, not really too much for us to worry about. Our 1 ring stays around. We're only losing a couple of things here. Now, notably they are probably casting that to get rid of our Memnarch, but we've got our Banishing Knack at the ready. So let's use that. We'll target our Serra Ascendant as our creature that's going to be able to tap. Now we'll tap our Serra Ascendant, and we'll bounce our Memnarch back to our hand. And that way, if our opponent doesn't really have too much else going on, I think we're going to be able to close the game out here. But it looks like our opponent decides to concede there. Alright guys, well that is the game done. Let's go to the review and discuss what happened. So this game was the perfect demonstration of what the deck can do and how powerful it can be with the right permanents on board. That early Faber Elder helped us quickly accelerate our mana, and once we got our Shorokai down combined with our Itlamok Cradle of the Sun, we were generating so much advantage that our opponents just couldn't keep up, even in the face of removal. We also got to see just how punishing it can be for our opponents if even one of them doesn't have blockers on board in the early game. Simple mana dorks and even utility creatures like Reese the Redeemed become powerful enablers thanks to the Derevi triggers they generate, and they were a big part of the reason that we won this game. Well, that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed seeing just how explosive this commander can be, and I also hope it serves as a reminder that even though we often look ahead when looking for new commanders to build, sometimes it's worth it to look back every now and then as well. Until next time, guys.